Since its election in 2023, the new Finnish government planned and executed a lot of conservative and protective reforms. This includes a more demanding access to the Finnish citizenship or a restricted access to the Finnish territory for internationals. Today, Radio Turku invited Owain Hopeaketo to discuss these measures and their impact on Finland. Owain is an international expert working as a project manager at the trade union TEK, and recently his union published a survey addressed to international experts working in the technology field. The results betray a loss of trust in the Finnish system. Hope you will enjoy this video and don't hesitate to discuss this topic in the comments or to share this video. Welcome, Owain, to this first online episode of Radio Turku. It's a first for us. We have always been recording in a studio for now, but we are trying to engage more guests from other cities in Finland. Today we are going to discuss the new government's measures that are impacting a lot immigrant status in Finland. And for that reason, we have invited someone who works for a union, so TEK, and maybe you could introduce yourself, explain a bit what's your job, and maybe tell us a bit more about the survey your organization has published recently.
Yeah, so my name is Owain Hopeaketo. I moved from the UK to Finland in 2016, so 8 years ago now, and started by being active in student culture. I came here to study. I did chemical engineering in Aalto University 2.5 years ago, joining TEK when TEK had an opening in working with international students. So TEK is academic engineers and architects in Finland, to make the very catchy name. So we're the trade union for those people. So anyone studying, anyone working as in engineering, in architecture, and in these related STEM fields. So maths, physics, ICT, bit of chemistry. The edges are quite vague, but this kind of science engineering sphere. That means 80,000 members, give or take. 25,000 of those members are students. And crucially, I guess for this, 5% of our members are or ask us to use English in their services, which is how we judge nationality, because we don't ask for what is your nationality, because I don't even know if we're allowed to. So what language do you want us to use? 5% say English. So let's say about 4,000 English-speaking members. My work in TEK, so I started at the start of this year, after 2 years in TEK, as project manager for international experts, the nice long and saying nothing title. And that basically means I'm working internally on recruitment, on making sure our kind of services as a union are as good as they could be. But it also means working externally with, for example, with universities. I work on projects with universities on how do we keep technology students or international students in Finland? How do we get more international students hired after they graduate? Also then means replying to these government proposals and doing this kind of lobbying work. And this, survey, things like the survey that we published. Now also mention, as I should always say when I'm talking TEK and talking trade unions, that you don't need to be worried that you've now listened to trade union propaganda, and if you go to work and tell your boss about it, you're going to be fired. Finland, over 50% of every worker in Finland is part of a trade union. They are a very normal, very recognized, everyday part of working life. So I should sort of say before continuing that there is a reason why we have been so central to this discussion. Yeah, we started this survey now. I think we held it between March and May, maybe, because, between us and the other trade union, Insinööriliitto, who I don't remember their name in English, Association of Engineers, maybe, Between the two of us, we have 150,000 members, and we have thousands and thousands of international members. And we were hearing more and more from our international members how angry, how upset, and how worried they were regarding the upcoming government, uh, regarding the government proposals. So we had held this survey, and we received over 1,000 respondents, which was a really, really high number for one of our surveys. About 1 in 4 of all our international members responded. Uh, yeah, so I guess the main results to consider. Well, the three that we were talking about in media were that 89% of our members of our international respondents found the debate worrying, and that's huge. Only half would recommend Finland, which is kind of extremely worrying from a future Finland point of view. If only half, these are people who are all engineers, who are all very highly skilled fields, and the only way Finland attracts those people is by word of mouth, basically. So, yeah,
Yeah, I would like to add here that it's shocking how Finland won against the prize for happiest country in the world, and at the same time, it was ranked super low in the happiest countries for immigrants.
yeah,
So it really shows a discrepancy between the treatment of immigrants, especially non-European ones, and Finnish citizens.
yeah. And there was a study recently into brain waste, the percentage of which sort of skills are being utilized by the native population in a country and by the immigrant population in a country. And in European standards, Finland is actually doing very well for the native population, but Finland is doing well. The difference between native and non native was much larger in Finland than many other countries that were doing as well for the natives. Um, so, yeah, it's very evident that there is this difference. But we also did see that we asked, for example, things about discrimination, about do you feel you've been discriminated against when you're looking for a job? And a large percentage said, yes, I felt discriminated against when I looked for a job. But then we asked about the current job they have, and they didn't feel that they were being discriminated against. So it's not like this discrimination is present through all of society. It's just that there are these very, very large barriers, very large walls in the way of people kind of entering society, and that's the issue.
Yeah, and another point that I found really interesting. So one of the biggest issue usually to get a job, or one of the biggest discrimination, is the language barrier, and it's very surprising for a country where 70% of Finns are speaking English. That is not the case, for instance, in France, where it's way lower the number, and so it could be an issue to not speak English. But here, uh, it sounds sometimes surprising to hear. Okay, you cannot get this job because you are not fluent enough in Finnish.
Yeah, it's. I was on a student radio show, and I was talking about trying to make student culture more international and what we can do, and to make more students be included. And I got a question in the chat that was just integration equals onlization, or in turning things into English question mark. And I was trying to say that isn't the point, because it does need to happen some of that, but it has to be kind of this bridge that's built from both sides. Like you can expect immigrants to speak more Finnish and to speak some Finnish because I like preserving a language, but also we need to lower the barrier that allows Finns to speak English more comfortably. And it isn't just a case of switch everything to English and every problem is solved. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and message to Finns: you speak really well English. Don't stress about it, because I know there are a lot who feel shy and judge that you speak way better English than most of Europeans. Don't worry.
as a Brit, it's worse that they hear the British accent and then they get very worried.
Yes, I didn't think about it.
And
The positive side was that from your survey, clearly international experts said that once they land a job, they feel way more integrated into Finnish society. So it should be something to value for the Finnish government, that the harder it is to get a job, the less people will get a job and will feel integrated. So it's better to give the opportunity to internationals to get this position, because then they make even more effort to learn Finnish, get a citizenship, etc. It's motivating in general.
Yeah, I think very few people don't want to integrate. It seems to be the common misconception by the government that there are these people who are willingly sitting at the edge of society, not integrating. And I think it's such as low percentage of immigrants or international people who are doing this. It's so many want to integrate, but I mean, when I was a student, I was the person trying to be the bridge between the Finns and the non-Finns. And if you see someone in the corner, they're not standing in the corner out of choice. They're usually in the corner because they don't know how to integrate, and it's the same in society. Um, yeah, and finding a job and having meaning in your life is such a huge part of it. And finding a job that is still relevant is also not having this sort of brain waste in your job, feeling like you are contributing positively to society, not being forced to do a cleaning job when you have a PhD. This is the number one issue that I think sits at the heart of everything about the sort of immigration issue is how do we get more jobs, or more people working in jobs.
Yeah. Maybe do you have a final remark to conclude on this survey? Like, what yourself struck you the most when you check the results?
Well, I mean, I can say it was the this sort of this or how we laid it out. The final section was these statements about the future, and I think this was the really powerful kind of part of it. Was we didn't just have an 89% found it worrying. We asked several questions about in 5 years, how do you see Finland? And in those we had 11 to 19% actually seeing a positive future in Finland. And that is hugely worrying when these are people who, as we've said, have good, stable jobs. They are people who are happy with their lives in Finland. They are people who, I think it was, 60% or something, want to stay here for a long time or permanently. And they are the people saying that we are very worried about 5 years' time. And seen as the government's plan is to, remove the immigrants who aren't productive. These are the people who are. Like, there's no kind of questioning it. These are people who are working in good, stable engineering jobs. If there is something as unskilled migrants, these are definitely not them. So it's a really, really worrying statistic, and I really hope it keeps coming up in the following months.
I will move on to my second question, which was what are the new government's measure trying to tackle? Why is this new government reducing a lot the benefits for both Finns and international? Why are they trying to make it harder to get the Finnish citizenship, to stay unemployed in Finland? And the answer that we can find from their website is that the government's program's objective is to reform Finland's migration policy so that it offers assistance to the most vulnerable people and prevents abuse of the system. So there is this idea that is really popular among Europe in general, that they are immigrants who abuse the system, who are trying to get too much out of it, or who are trying to stay unemployed and just get benefit without working. And it's really shared idea in France. So I'm quite worried that it will continue to contaminate more countries in Europe. And I don't think you leave your country by pure pleasure in general. It's always very hard to leave your family, leave your friends, all your social connections, but also your culture, your food. For a lot of people, this is a struggle. And then you arrive in a new country, you know no one, you have to rebuild everything from the start. So for sure, it's exciting, but it's also a great loss for at a lot of different levels. And so I always struggle with this idea that immigrants are coming just to enjoy uh, the wealth of a country, because for sure not. When you see the results, immigrants are very often the social category that is struggling the most to get a job that fits their skills.
Yeah, I can say just quickly that the hilarious or the not the you have to laugh so you don't cry. Fact is that Finland has a very, very, very low level of migration and immigration.
Yeah, also true.
On the European scale, and if you compare to any, well, even France, but Central European countries, Finland does still have a tiny, tiny amount. So we really shouldn't be having this discussion, but unfortunately we are.
And very skilled immigrants in general.
Yeah.
Like,
And yeah, in terms of what the government is trying to tackle is, yeah, a question that you could ask from ministers and they might not be able to answer. But yeah, there's the two main parties making up the government, and this is the reason this whole discussion is so confusing and confusing for everyone, I think, and seems to have a different message every week, is the difference between the two parties. Kokoomus, the National Coalition Party, big business, economy, cuts, savings, making sure that lots of people are in work. And these are generally policies that are not, or that are extra harmful for the working class. It's the working class who are most hard hit. Not as much as in a country like the US, but still proportionally, it's the poorest who are most affected by the cuts. Perussuomalaiset, the far right, well, they'd object to being called far right, but the populist party have the one policy basically of wanting as low immigration as possible, or zero immigration. They would happily have. But they had lots of voters who were working class people, or they were very, very popular amongst the working class and amongst rural working class voters. And that means that these parties don't work together. The economy needs immigration, and the working class voters are the ones being hurt by the economic policy. And so they've been making these trades, making these deals, and creating these strange policies. And I think that's maybe my opinion more than the unions, but the union would say in a more tactful way, maybe. But yeah, I like to call it there's like the phrase marriage of convenience about this sort of thing, and it's a marriage of inconvenient convenience because it doesn't really suit either party.
yeah, like the people who suffer the most from these government measures from the Finns are the people who have lower incomes. So, like students who get less benefits, unemployment that is reduced, and it's
Yeah,
exactly the people who need to be supported. I was really surprised by the measures for the Finns.
yeah. And this was again the trade that the far right party had taken to allow to get their low immigration is that they're okay now with having the poorest hit in society. And and yeah, the if you listen to the government, I mean, you sort of showed the slide of whatever phrase they've used, but officially it's that they want to get people into the workforce. Finland needs a strong economy, and a strong economy needs as many people in the workforce as possible. So if you look at every one of the major measures, it's about getting as many people in the workforce as possible and as few people in Finland not in the workforce as possible. So 3 month rule, kick out the people who aren't. Citizenship changes is, as you say, stop people sort of getting this golden ticket towards citizenship where they can just sit down at home for 10 hours a day and not work.
Yes.
Yeah, so we need to increase citizenship time because we need to stop people getting this free ride in Finland. The other major change I keep pointing out is the tuition fee changes. The full costing of tuition fees, meaning that effectively non-EU students are paying much higher tuition fees than before. Each of these, the government justifies, as you showed in that slide, as making it sound pro-migrant, making it sound pro-immigrant. That it's what was for cutting down on, or they make it sound, 3 month rule. It was that it's about protection. It's all about protection. And citizenship is about integration, and the tuition fees is about retention. And they have these like little phrases that I used. But ultimately, well, then we have a contrast of what the parties want, what policies are saying, what actually the impact will be, and these all kind of mix together and make the discussion very confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you answered it well, and the logical following question is: Could you explain a bit the consequences that immigrant could face because of these measures? And there is one that is especially striking to me is the change of access to the Finnish citizenship. Normally, at least until now, it was 4 years to get the Finnish citizenship plus language test. But at the moment, the government wants to make this number of years higher. So I understood 8 years at the beginning, but apparently it will be 5. Um, and they want to also add, so they are saying it's a citizenship test, which is, from what I understood, culture test about, for instance, history or how to be a good citizen in Finland. I'm really curious to see what this test will look like, and something really funny would be to make Finns take that test and see if they themselves can pass it. Could you talk a bit about the consequences for immigrants?
Yeah. Well, I think despite the fact that the tone is generally quite negative in this, my main point would be that the changes are not as bad. If you've just been looking at social media and if you've just looked at newspaper headlines, the changes are not as bad as they sound. And I've been criticized for saying this by someone, and I still completely stand by it. Obviously, there is some people who are affected to the level that social media is saying, but if we take, for example, the citizenship change is everywhere being said as 8 years. Currently, it's 4 years, so that's a huge increase. But for kind of keeping the current, what you currently need to get citizenship is now 5 years. Like, it's just 5 years instead of 4, and it's exactly the same language test as it is now, supposedly. And even in 8 years, you still have to do some kind of language test. So it's a small increase from 4 to 5 years, which is really, I mean, it's not good. But if we also consider that the government is at least planning to cut down the waiting times, increase the number of UKI language tests that are available, decrease the amount of time it takes to get the results back, actually maybe 4 years to 5 isn't even much of an increase at all if all the other sort of delays are taken out. But this has been said as 8 years because it promotes ideas that the policy is harsher than it is. And this again is part of the compromise between the two parties, is my theory. Same as the 3 month rule. The 3 month rule is harsh, and in our TEK statement against it, we were very strong that we completely disagree with it as a policy. Actually, the funny story was I was in Italy last year on holiday when the policy was announced, and I thought it must have been a joke policy, that they were like, they'll put that policy in there to make less bad policies, but bad policies go under the radar. And I thought they're actually going to stick to this policy. And then it became apparently their main policy. But it says in the policy, the 3 months is a period of protection after which the residence permit may be removed if appropriate. It doesn't say you will be deported at the point of 3 months. It says, on this word may is crucial because may equals there is a choice. And so I'm an optimist. I see a Finland in which very, very few are actually deported on the 3 months. I just do not see it happening a lot of the time. Possibly for repeat, where I say offenders when they haven't really done anything wrong, but possibly in those cases, or if there's some other factors. But especially if we're talking people with university degrees, then I just do not see the MIDRI deciding that they are going to kick these people out. But that's all the logic, and that's what the logic is telling me. But unfortunately, people aren't logical, and life isn't just about logic. And these policies do have a serious impact on the feeling of safety, the feeling of belonging, the feeling that Finland is a country for you, which is a huge, huge impact. And it also, as I said about, for example, with the where you may be deported or you may have your residence permit removed, we can see a world in which MIDRI, who are not always known for their equal treatment of immigrants already, no matter what reforms happen, we can see a world in which they are preferentially kicking out some and not others for reasons that is what I should say. And we can create this unequalness in the immigrant population based on factors that should not be people are being judged on. So it's not as bad, maybe, as could be said, but at the same time, there are definite serious consequences.
Yeah, as you say, especially for the feeling of safety and so for the attraction of Finland in general, which is really a shame because Finland clearly doesn't have a population that makes enough kids, that has enough skilled workers. So they need this immigration, and by you're really scaring qualified people when you are implementing these measures. So this
Yeah.
was the downside or consequences for immigrants, but what about the country in general? And I think that one of the consequence for the country is receiving less skilled immigrants in Finland.
Yeah, that's the main. It sounds heartless in a way when we're talking about a very kind of we should be talking about people, and we should be focusing on the effect on the people, but it the main impact is the impact on Finland and the future of Finland. Um, Finland, as a country in Northern Europe that's small, that has a huge border with Russia, that has fairly awful weather based on those people's views, that doesn't have a language that's easy to learn at all, has quite shy, introverted people. It needs a good reputation. Like it will not be getting. It cannot just be Germany and attract people based on it's Germany. Um, and Finland has done this very successfully. This very good reputation globally of number one in the education rankings and happiest country in the world and everything. But in this last couple of months, we've seen, or in the last year even, this reputation erode. And this trust that the immigrants have here in the country erode. And trust and reputation are very easy to lose, or are easier to lose than they are to get back.
Yeah.
And it could be many, many years until Finland gets back the reputation that it's already lost, let alone in what's going to happen in the next couple of years. As you said, Finland has a falling birth rate. We can't just pull out 10-year-old kids. That's not how it works. The only way you can get those is from abroad. And we have companies that are growing. Like Finland has a lot of small companies, a lot of these small startup technology sector companies, and these are a huge part of Finland's growth, a huge part of Finland's future. But they don't need to employ people in Finland. If we take, I don't know, Volt, for example, even as kind of a big one that has done this, they, for a lot of their jobs, they can hire someone in Finland, obviously not the whole drivers, but in terms of the like IT behind it and everything, the innovation side. They can hire someone in Finland or they can hire someone in Germany. And the job's online completely. There's no difference to them. So if they can't find the talent in Finland, they're just going to hire the talent elsewhere. And then the Finnish economy is losing out massively. So from a pure kind of economic capitalist point of view, these are terrible changes. As I think the official statistic is 44,000 migrants are needed per year in order to maintain the current workforce, is the ETSLA survey results. That if Finland isn't getting 44,000 net migration per year, then Finland is losing workforce. And, well, you can imagine the changes that these are having. And it was in the same week as the 3-month-old discussions, Arto Satonen, the Ministry of Employment, so the person in charge of this, came out and said on Tuesday that he doesn't think the 3-month rule and this sort of threat of being kicked out after 3 months has a serious impact on people's decision to stay here.
Optimistic.
And the next day, he wrote an article in their official Ministry of Employment blog that said how much Finland needs skilled talent and how much Finland needs foreign talent and how Finnish companies need to do a better job of recruiting foreign talent the next day. And they just they don't understand this reputational damage and the long-lasting impacts of reputational damage on Finland's ability to attract. Because I think most Finns are rightfully proud of their country. It is a great country, and they should be proud. But that has the sort of flip side that they have trouble seeing when things are going wrong. And if you're going to choose any country, why choose Finland? It's getting harder to justify for many immigrants.
Yeah, I really feel that Finland shot themselves in the feet. They were doing so well, and I've been living here for 4 years, and I really see a drastic change since the last elections, both for Finns and international, and it also increased, I think, the tensions between Finns and immigrants, and that leads us to our last question, which is if you could suggest yourself a measure on a or an initiatives, what would it be to brighten a bit the future of Finland?
It's this is I guess I've got three fast answers, three answers that the sort of the small initiatives. So this is what we have in TEK, for example, been given in our comments to the ministry on the proposals. Things like that 3 or 6 months is not at all realistic. If you're going to have a time limit on unemployment, it needs to be a year or something like that. Or there needs to be inclusions of if you have ongoing job applications that are like then you can get longer, or there needs to be a small tweak. Or for example, with the tuition fee changes or this or citizenship changes, some kind of carrot, not just stick, in terms of language learning. In terms of if they're saying they want people to integrate, then provide a carrot, provide that you get. This doesn't help you as an EU person, but you get money off your tuition fees if you take a certain number of language courses, or
Yeah, good idea.
things that actually encourage integration and don't just punish you for not doing it. Then I can say the larger option, the nuclear option, or not quite, but would be adopting something like the Canadian model of immigration. In Canada has probably the most successful immigration policy in the world. Canada not only has a huge percentage of immigration in terms of compared to their total population, Canada also has a high approval rates for immigration. It's one of the only countries in the world where people generally consider that immigration is adding to their society and adding to their economy, and they see the benefits. And how Canada has done this, one of the main ways is having this route of immigration that's point-based, and that crucially gives permanent residence to someone upon entry. So if you can sort of prove that you should get to move there by getting a job there, by having, say, family there, having skills, or having work experience, or having an education that means you useful to the country, then you get this very fast route to permanent residence, and then you don't have to worry about being kicked out. Then you don't have to. Companies can hire you more safely because they don't have to worry about your permit state. It's just beneficial for everyone. And yeah, Canada lets in a huge number of these people every year, and they massively succeed. And that's
Yeah,
what.
I'm really surprised by this because I got very different feedback from people applying to Canada, and I know a few who didn't manage to stay there because of the strict policies about migration. So interesting. Maybe it depends also on your level of expertise or.
Yeah, I will admit to not being a full, complete expert in this. It's one of my co-workers has just been.
Okay, we need to get them to present the Canadian model.
Yeah, and we held an event earlier this year promoting the Canadian model. We had the Canadian ambassador there, and it was a big.
Okay.
Um, so that's at least something that or this kind of alternative ways of thinking about migration, not just this thing good, this thing bad. And then as a final thing, we do have the local elections, the municipal elections, city elections, whatever you call them, in April next year. And my sort of initiative would be getting not just immigrants to vote, but getting immigrants to run for city councils. That is hugely important. It's the city level that is deciding, I don't know, employment services, language services, health, like everything is being decided by the city. So no matter what the government does, it's the city who are helping you actually get a job, and it's the city who are actually helping you on a day-to-day basis. And so it's vital that people vote, and as well as this, that they stand. And in general, it's vital that the government hears from immigrants during the local elections. So if I could say an initiative, it's that every city in Finland should have at least one non-Finn running for the city council. Ideally, a percentage that represents the population.
Yeah, I feel this would change a lot of things because first Finns would be more aware about immigrants' issues, and then immigrants could gather more support from the immigrants' communities and make them more aware about the policies, because that's also why we are planning this series of interviews, is because for a lot of immigrants it's difficult to get clear information about what is happening.
Yeah, I was just actually wondering in terms of who the politicians are in Turku who might be interested in this exact issue. I'm sure there are at least one or two politicians in Turku who would happily talk about how important it is and explain the system and everything.
Yeah. Okay, but I think we are done with all our questions. So you have a final word or a conclusion to share?
Be active, or like that. Things aren't as bad as you think, and it's very easy to hear everything that's being discussed in media and to get this kind of apathy about everything is doomed, everything is over, the country hates us, all Finns hate us. It's not like that at all. It's such a small percentage of Finland that is doing this. And most of Finns are wonderful people, and Finland has only really had immigrants for 50 years, maybe. It's a hugely new phenomenon here. So it's a lack of knowledge more than outright anything discriminatory. So just be the change maker, I guess, and don't give in to just the despair of these policies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.